Welcome back to the Jeremiah Show. If you're just joining us, my special guest today is Glen Phillips, Toad the Wet Sprocket, lead singer and songwriter. He's also an outstanding solo artist and records and performs. He's got, was it 11 albums that I said earlier, Glenn? I forget
I'm
the
I'm
count.
not sure. There's a bunch of
A lot
solo
of
and then
them.
some side projects and lots of
We're
weird
listening
stuff.
now to Always Have My Love by Glen Phillips. It's on the Works Progress Administration album. August 28th, 2009, this was released. It's a great album. As you can hear, the song is amazing. Glenn, welcome back.
Hi, how you doing? That's the band
I'm
was also called the band was called Works Progress Administration. That's a side project with Sean and Sarah Watkins from Nickel Creek, Luke Bola, Ben Montench, Davey Farragher, Greg Leese, and Pete Thomas. It was a huge band.
mm,
In terms of number of people, we didn't
hmm
sell any records.
great people. It's always hard, huh, when you get these great musicians together and you guys put out such great work. To get the bar to get it out there. There's just so much music, but this is a really great album. I recommend it highly. Pick it up, or you can stream it on Spotify. So Glenn launched a solo career when Toad went on hiatus in the early days there. During that time, he also collaborated with other artists. He mentioned a few, including Mutual Admiration Society, Nickel Creek, and Remote Tree Children members, and an experimental outing with John Morgan Eskew. Glenn's solo record, Swallowed by the View, was about grief and a post-divorce outing. As hard as that time was for you, Glenn, was it fruitful? Was grieving fruitful? It sounds weird to ask that, but that way. But as a songwriter and as an artist, did it give to you in the
Oh,
grief?
well, I certainly had material and grief. I don't think I'd thought much about it or had much of a relationship with it before that. And when I was going through the divorce, I found that like divorce conversations and divorce literature were not really helping me much. Um, and I found a lot of peace in poetry, started reading a lot more Mary Oliver and David White, Mark Nepo, um, and started finding more that literature on grief made more sense to me because it wasn't, you know, it wasn't more like in the divorce stuff, and maybe I just looked at the wrong stuff. A lot of it's, much more practical and getting your life together, but I wanted to understand, what I was feeling and so spent a lot of time studying grief, and the literature around death actually made more sense to me, and this idea of um, the human heart not really wanting things to change. The things we love, we kind of preserve in amber. And when they go away, there's this missing spot in our hearts and our minds that we have to actually work to accept and rectify. And so, and you don't grieve what you don't love, that
Yeah.
there's this, if you care about something deeply, if it really means something to you and I remember hearing David White uh, in one of his lectures talking, his great example of like nothing even needs to be wrong for grief to happen. Death is a normal process. It's a painful process. It doesn't happen usually according to a schedule that we agree on. But uh, he says, even your children growing up happy and healthy and moving away, there's grief. It's a massive change in your life. And um, so that understanding and to kind of view grief with a sense of gratitude
hmm
and was a big shift for me.
So in
And
a way, you're saying you're thankful a little bit by because you loved somebody and you actually experienced the grief.
yeah, well, and with I mean, it's a package of grief, right? Because in divorce, it's not just the person. I mean, the relationship had not been working really well, or it would still be together. Um, but there was also a deep friendship in there. There was a family unit. We'd had two kids just, move away and go to college. A lot of grief in that. There was the house I'd been at for 20 years that had been a place where there was always a stream of people coming in and out. It was the meeting place for community. It was where kids' friends felt safe. And, there would be just these flocks of teenagers. And, my life at home, a lot of musicians have like, they really, I missed those single years. I was with my first wife since I was 18. We got married at 23, kids at 25. And so, you know, when I was the age that my kids are now, I already had kids, and uh, and so uh, there's that learning how to work at home and be at home and adjust from tour life to home life. I very quickly put all of that into being a dad. And so when I get home, I was full-time play, like I loved being with my kids more than anything. I could be silly. I could, they were my antidepressants. Um, and so when they got older and didn't need me so much, I really didn't know what to do with myself. And I got pretty depressed. And so, but when you're looking at the end of a marriage, it's not just that relationship and that person. It's being a hub to community. It's all that massive Venn diagram that's like almost complete overlap of everybody everybody you love, everything you do is tied up in that. And uh, so it's a complex grief. Um, you're losing much more than one thing. And uh, but understanding that, respecting it, and then finding, what you find in there is, oh, what do I love? What do I care about? What do I want? I want community. I want a warm home. I want, like these are the things that actually really matter to me because those are the things that really, broke my heart the most. I'm so excited that I'm going to be getting a grandkid. Well, probably I'm pushing them into it, but they're going to be trying to have a baby later this year. And
Okay. I was gonna
I'm
say, is
one of
there
those
congratulations in order?
I cannot wait to be a grandfather. I can't wait. It's going to be the best. I need babies.
Yeah. It's got to be a very, very cool thing to be a grandfather. Um, Especially a first-time grandfather. You look like a man who might spoil his grandchild.
We'll see.
Well, then you come through that time and that period, and it sounds like you saw the other side and you started appreciating life and what was important to you. On There Is So Much Here, you began writing love songs again, and the album, I love the title, There Is So Much Here. I mean, just think about it for a second and what that might relate to if you haven't heard the album. Your The album focuses on gratitude, on beauty, on staying present. Um, how did you practice being present, and what did you learn about yourself by slowing down at this time, Glenn?
Well, I mean, part of the reason I write a lot of songs about gratitude and presence is that I have difficulty with gratitude and presence. And so I think of
How
songwriting not
so?
as, well, meaning like, well, two parts. One part is just in terms of songwriting, people think of, artists learning these big life lessons and then sharing their sagacity, their all their wisdom with everybody else, right? And I think really for me it's like a lot of songs are it's the messages I need to hear, the things I need to be reminded of, or it's like, sometimes a letter from a later, more evolved person that I hope to be to my current self.
It's a neat
Right?
way of looking at it.
Yeah. So it's um, Gratitude, you know, I have struggled a lot with depression. I struggle a lot with negative ideation. I, reflexively look at what could go wrong with a situation instead of what might go right. Uh, and I have to work against those tendencies in myself.
Mhm.
And um, I have an active kind of butterfly mind. I wake up and it's already racing. And so um, I find that when I have presence, if I find myself, I will go kicking and screaming into the woods with no devices. But once I'm there, I'm very happy because the mind starts noticing all kinds of things. And, uh, it's, there's a lot of different ways to um, approach mindfulness. And, it doesn't have to be uh, a seated meditation, on a zafu in front of an altar with it doesn't have to be any of that. It can be waking up with my mind racing in the morning and just, I do a lot of Vipassana in the morning because I wake up usually an hour before my wife, and there's no acoustic separation in the house, so I can't go play a guitar. So I just scan up and down my body and try to be present in the morning. And then I play my games, the New York Times games. But it's anything like that, or just playing a song, or just, you know, it doesn't have to be anything like fancy or esoteric, I guess is what I'm saying. And not having the option during lockdown of going anywhere and going on tour and thinking about packing and preparing for the next tour and then thinking about, it's like there are all those things with, with lockdown. It's like I was in one place
Mhm.
and I had my shows to prepare for. It was the first time I've been at home where it's like I have a schedule because I'm doing 5 shows a week. I got to learn these songs. I'm going to check in with these people. I got to find a nonprofit for it's like, so it all gave me this framework of things to do. And it was really nice to rise to that and also just be aware of what was around me, go make coffee in the morning, bring it back to
Yeah.
bed, like, these simple things that, most people get to be in the same place every day.
Mhm.
And I've had a life that um, can kind of both train you to a particular kind of attention, but also train you to expect newness and difference all the time. Uh,
Right.
so,
Which would seem to me could be very hard on the mind and the body, the
and the
ever changing,
relationships.
constant battering of one place to the next. I hope you don't mind if I quote you. I know that I don't think I'd ever want to be quoted, so I hope you don't mind. But you said,
Depends on the line.
yeah, well, it's good. It's really good here. With this batch of songs from the album, There Is So Much Here, that you noticed you were writing hopeful music again, and you turned a corner. You were more interested in curiosity and play than when you were gazing at your navel. You
Hmm.
said, I was finally in a state of being that wasn't about grief and loss anymore, and things felt doable and even exciting again. And it made me think that last part, that things were exciting for you again, made me think about how many times we have those inspirations. Those times when you're excited to get up and
Hmm.
write a song or go on a tour or, for me today to get up and interview you, these, how many times do we get those in our life? How many times will we fall in love again? They are fleeting.
Hmm.
They are not guaranteed, and they're not always given. And I think they slowly fade. So you've got to keep
Hmm.
yourself in that frame of mind.
But I don't think that's necessarily a better state than grief either. I mean, grief's inevitable. Someone I love is gonna die
Mm.
at some unknown point. I'm gonna suffer some or someone I love will suffer some tragedy or massive change. I mean, these are just seasons, and it was really lovely to come out of, you know, that season where I was identifying. But I will also say grief and loss propelled me to learn a lot and to become aware in ways that I had not been before. It was very instructive and grew me up, you know, uh, in a lot of ways. So
Was it at a time, did it come at the right time where you needed that? Where
yeah,
you
probably.
didn't
I
realize you
mean,
needed it, but it's,
it may, there's a bit of that that can sometimes be, oh, what's the word for it? Retcon, you know that term?
I don't,
Retroactive,
retro.
retroactive continuity
Okay.
happens in
I hadn't heard
sci-fi
that before.
sometimes. Star Trek's really good at retcon, but oh, it was an alternate universe. Okay, but it yeah, it happened at the right time because it happened. It's like, you know, we don't get to go back and redo things, and uh, I think even the concept of karma, like, it gets talked about as, you can get lost in the idea that you're, you know, paying the price for things you did in a past life, and how am I gonna like, I think karma is a way of saying that whatever happened to you, it had to happen. It did happen. And you learn nothing by regret, you know? And I say this as a person who worries a lot about the future and spends a lot of time regretting the past. So I know of what I speak from experience. And I've never solved anything through regret. Uh, what, but there is an opportunity in anything to go like, and this is, kind of my interpretation of karma is this thing happened. Uh, am I going to complain about it? Am I going to resist reality? Uh, or am I going to figure out a way? You might not be able to make lemonade out of every lemon you get. Am I going to figure out a way to grow through this, to at least gain resilience, uh, to maybe expand my point of view and my preconceptions and expectations, to build types of happiness or joy that are not situation dependent, to build tools that will make me more resilient later on. All of those things are, there is a lot of opportunity. And I think if we just allow ourselves to shut down and retreat, and this isn't to say that there aren't also times I feel like I'm slowly, winters are like this for me. I retreat in winters, and um, I I can get kind of small during the winter. Um, hiding and resting are needed.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
but hiding and resting are needed so that we can come back into the world in the same way, that doing whatever spiritual work or retreat, you know, you can get caught on a hamster wheel of self-improvement that's never ending. But, I think the purpose of that work is not to make you better or improve you or get you to some higher level. It's to make you more capable in handling the weather of life so that you have some resilience when it gets hard. You have something to offer others. It's not all about you, right?
Yeah.
So, um, yeah. So, I mean, for me, I love having been in an expansive state. I feel, frankly, kind of constricted again at the moment, and you know, the uh, the world has been hard for me to take right now. The kind of normalization of kinds of hate and punching down, and just kind of the lack of compassion, um, can get really overwhelming. And sometimes you need to curl up in a ball for a minute, or we sang played the Ann Arbor Folk Festival recently, and we were coming up with a song for the Toad was playing there, and we were going to do Three Little Birds for the encore, and it was right after the election, and I'm more of a lefty. Ann Arbor is more of a lefty town. It's like people were in mourning and people were
Yeah.
kind of, in this a little bit of shock, right? It was not after the, sorry, right after the inauguration. And so, it was a group of people, whether or not you agree with us politically, it's like, hey, having a hard time. And one of the people, it's like I said, Three Little Birds, would you mind singing it with us? And they go, oh, Three Little Birds. Well, that's a song. And my plea was like, and even the introduction to the song is like, hey, there's time for protest songs. There's a need to speak truth to power. There's a need for all of this. There's also a need to just sing together and have hope and have a lullaby and get your strength because you're going to need it because it's a long haul. And so, um, and, you know, I think hatred and self-assurance can move very quickly, and love moves at a slower pace. And
Yeah.
love requires a patience uh, that uh, the uncompassionate don't need to show. So,
What, how powerful, how beautiful that experience and what you just shared. I'd imagine that, when you're feeling smaller and you in the winters and as you just described about yourself, when you get to step out there on that stage and you've got those your audience and the people that love you, does that just replenish you and just feed your soul, fill you back up?
sometimes I think I've
You need
described
them, your
before
audience.
that I didn't just, somebody sent me this, God, this interview where I was so insanely tired. I look like I'm tripping on something. But but I was trying to describe like the feeling of disappearing on stage and that it's less everybody looking at you and it's more being practiced and capable enough that you can disappear into a song. And
Uh,
then um, it's not so much everybody looking at me and me getting to go, yes, I'm special.
mhm.
It's kind of dissolving into the room and having the song fill the room. And not every song does this and not every night. But the best moments live are kind of ceasing to exist and becoming a song and having the room become the song. And it's not
Mm.
about being an audience or a performer. It's just about being inside a song together and
Yeah. Wow, I like that.
being surprised by where it goes. And I mean, to me, that's the best. The psychedelic experiences are the same, right? They talk about like it's the ego death is the big moment, right? When you're not busy being you for a minute and you discover that there's all kinds of other things to be or that you actually are that aren't just, the little guy, sitting
Yeah.
in the captain's seat. I read this book on consciousness by David Eagleman and forgetting he had Live Wire. Forget what the consciousness one was called, but he's a neurologist and he's talking about the actual idea of a self and an ego. It's a very small bit of your mind. And I was describing it as, once again, it's like one of those giant mecha robots with this little guy in the driver's seat right up here going, I'm in control. I'm in control. And meanwhile, like you think of the sophistication of all these other subroutines that are allowing you to do things like walk and breathe and dream and notice and see. I mean, you know, there's so much just within ourselves that isn't this little tiny bit of ego. He actually posits this idea that the ego and the sense of self kind of developed as a way to learn difficult things because it's very kind of mentally taxing to learn difficult. Let's say playing guitar.
Hmm.
When you're practicing, where's your brain's? It's like you're burning calories in your brain. It's really hard to do. But once you've learned it, it basically if you're talking about in computer code, that code gets optimized and streamlined and turned into something that you do in a flow state without even thinking about it. And your mind can actually now wander when you play guitar. you know.
Amazing.
But this thing that used to be so difficult, anything we learn to do that is uh, difficult, we go through this process. And his idea is we need just enough ego, just enough self to learn hard things, but not so much self that we're just sitting there kind of pondering all the time and incapacitated. And so, um, a-
Stunned.
anyway,
Well, okay, we got to
I
take
don't
a
know
quick
where that even
break.
started. Sorry.
It all all makes sense. It's all some really interesting thoughts and perspectives. I don't think I've ever spoken to a musician, an artist such as yourself, with your level of success that has brought some really powerful ideas and truths to this interview. Glenn, I really appreciate the what you brought. It's you're leaving me with things to think about for quite a while after this. That's for sure.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna go out with Toad the Wet Sprocket, All I Want. It was released by Columbia Records in 1992 as the second single from their 91 album, Fear. All I Want reached the top 20 on the US Billboard Hot 100 and the Canadian RPM 100 hit tracks chart. You all know it, you all love it, and we're going to let you listen to it here. We'll be right back with more Glen Phillips right after this short break.